All right, team. We are back in the Fireside PM podcast, and I have Kirby Winfield from the great city of Seattle. You're still up in the Northwest, I'm guessing, right, Kirby?
Oh yeah, and I
Yeah.
tell you what, it is a beautiful blue sky spring day,
Oh,
60 degrees. I mean, we're coming around to that time of year where we get the rewards of having suffered through, as you recall, 120 days straight without sun. So
well, but you do have an amazing income tax in Washington State, which I've
don't
missed.
tell don't tell the legislature because they're trying like heck to get get uh, get double dip on us up here, but life's still good. We still welcome a lot of our brothers and sisters from California who find their way up to our haven.
It's
Up
a
here.
trade-off, yeah, for sure. And there is no other place that is quite as beautiful as Seattle on a nice day. Like it's magical.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, it. This is the time of year where I start just doing all my meetings at Green Lake, just walking
mm,
under those green trees, and just
yeah.
like and every year it's shocking because you're just so beaten down by this time that you never think it's coming back again. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know how many more of these winters I can handle, but I'll take the spring anyway. It's great
Love it.
seeing you, man.
Yeah. Well, for those who don't know you, Kirby, why don't you just give us a little bit of an introduction, and then we can get into the meat of the conversation about pre-seed investing.
Yeah, sure. I'll try to keep it short. It's hard. Every year that goes by, it's harder to do that. But I'm born and raised in the city of Seattle. I went back east for college and graduated in '96. At which point I moved to Manhattan to pursue a career in advertising. And 3 months after I moved to Manhattan, a friend of mine called and said, "Hey, I'm starting an internet company. Come back to Seattle." So I came back, was the sixth employee at a company called GoToNet. I ended up running marketing. We were at one point driving like a third of Google's traffic. We were a top 10 internet destination. We went public. And I was, a 24-year-old with like no experience running marketing for a $4 billion company. Uh, that was my kind of introduction to startups. And I, you know, made every mistake in the book, but it was a very forgiving time. And I had great, I worked for two great co-founders. And so, luckily it went well. We got out of that deal in 2000. And then, of course, as you know very personally and well, we did another one called MarchX. Um, and I was on the founding team there. We took that public as well. We did a $200 million secondary offering. We bought a bunch of domain names, and I ran that business. We grew it from $5 to $50 million in just over 2 years. And then I always like to say I mistook my good fortune for talent, and as lots of people do, I was not immune to that disease, and
Yeah.
I go, oh man, John and Russ, these guys are taking these companies public. I could do that. Like I was basically, making a huge difference on the team, so clearly I can be a CEO and do that. And so I took over a venture-backed startup that had raised $18 million. Quickly found out that it was built on some nasty traffic, and we did a hard pivot from this ad network that wasn't working to an analytics big data play. I had to lay off 2/3 of the staff, had to recapitalize the company. Spent 6 months on Sand Hill Road shopping the deal. I got two VCs to the finish line, and then the existing VC decided just to cram down the other VC. And that was my introduction to venture capital. And we sold the company. It was a great outcome. About a year later, very fortunate. And then I did one more startup as a founder. We raised a couple $1 million for a travel app that we sold to Expedia. And so like 20 years, 4 companies, 4 exits. But the ones that I ran were missing a couple zeros on the end of the exit value. As compared to the ones where I had just picked the right founders to bet my career on. So I thought, well, let me go back to, betting on founders, and let me do it with my money instead of my career. So I did angel investing off my own balance sheet for a period of time. And I did it because I found it was really kind of at the intersection of stuff I like and stuff I'm good at. So I always talk about most of my operating career, I was doing a lot of things that I didn't like and or wasn't good at, or both. And as an investor, I just realized I could lean into things that I love. Um, I'm a marketer at heart. I'm an outbound, I'm a network person. I love connecting people. I love bringing people together. I love events, and I love talking to people one on one. And I love the exchange of ideas, and I always found meeting with founders that I would learn something from them no matter what, and that I felt like I could maybe give them something useful, because I've made every mistake you could make as a founder. And I've gotten lucky on some stuff too, and maybe could share that. And so I started to realize as an angel investor that I was having these experiences where it didn't feel like a job. And I hadn't felt that way maybe ever, but certainly in a long time. And then I started to realize that the market responded well. Like these founders liked interacting with me, and like found my feedback valuable. And when I invested, those relationships got stronger. I was able to be helpful, bringing them customer introductions, or helping them with their first hires, or helping them raise capital. And at the same time, our mutual friend, Oren Etzioni, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Oren is a good friend, a neighbor, an old colleague, who was running Paul Allen's Institute for Artificial Intelligence, and brought me on to help them spin out an incubator program. So kind of another sort of step in the direction of doing more with founders, right? More to support founders. And finally had some interest from LPs in a fund. And so raised a first fund in 2019 and raised a second fund in 2021. That wasn't short. That was longer than I wanted it to be, but
no, that was great. I love it. I've recently just started getting into angel investing, and I definitely hear you that it is so fun talking to founders, and you get a little vicarious kind of thrill, kind of knowing that they're on the hunt. And hopefully I definitely enjoy kind of sharing some war stories and saying, hey, look, I know where you're coming from. This is what I did, and some lessons I learned the hard way, that kind of thing. So who knows if it'll be profitable or not.
No, it's really valuable, because it's something that you can do that the investors, the further they go up the capital stack, those investors can empathize or have useful experiences to share outside of the world of sort of investment management, right? Or board management. Sure, they've seen the movie, they've seen the strategy, but the 0 to 1 journey, the last thing you want is a growth investor talking to you. You want a founder. You want somebody who's been there and done that.
Well, Kirby, you did a post on LinkedIn that caught my eye. I'm going to share it on the screen here. And it has a very catchy start, which is like, hey, pre-seed investing is easy. And then you go through a bunch of learnings. And I thought it might be fun for us to go through each one and hear a little bit of the story behind it. Like, how did you arrive at that insight? As an example, the first one is don't over-index on pedigree, but make sure to back PhDs. Like, can you say more about that?
Sure. Yeah. So the idea to do this little tweet, I just, as an investor, I'm constantly trying to understand. It's sort of like observability from my own algorithm. Like, I want to understand why I'm thinking certain ways about certain founders, or why am I leaning towards an investment or away from an investment, and then mapping that to the data that I have about the 80 investments that we've made out of the fund so far, and just trying to understand, like, what are the right what's the right mental model to apply in evaluating founders. And so you start out by thinking, well, I don't know, I just use my gut, and I think I kind of know it when I see it. and then you go through this process of unpacking your gut, and you're like, well, what's informing that? What are the biases that I have? And as you do that, if you're honest about it, and if you're sort of intellectually candid, you realize that for every gut thing that you're leaning into, there's a lean the other way that's equally valid, and it's just confounding. And so it's sort of like the midwit peak meme.
No.
So basically, it's like there's like the simpleton who starts out and says a thing, the midwit at the top who's sweaty and is like, no, it's actually really difficult and sophisticated in this way. And then the genius at the end who says the same thing the person at the beginning said. And so that's the journey that I've been on, because you unpack it all, you balance it all, you try to figure it out, and then you go, yeah, no, it's your gut. And so this was kind of an explication of that process of unpacking. And so the first one, you don't want to just back people who worked at a certain type of company with a certain type of job, or who came from a certain type of university with a certain type of credential. Because they're just, if you look at the outcomes, they're distributed much more broadly than that. Otherwise, Stanford PhDs would never work at Stanford, and they would never Stanford PhDs would walk out the door with $50 million from a VC every time they graduated. All of them would, if it were true that that actually mattered, right? Then that would be something along those lines would be happening, but it's not, because it turns out, like, so what? You have a Stanford PhD. Are you a founder? Can you hack your way to product market fit? Can you tell a story that allows you to hire people you shouldn't be able to hire, and raise money you shouldn't be able to raise, and get press you shouldn't be able to get, and close customers you shouldn't be able to close? I mean, that really has, none of that has anything to do with a PhD from anywhere, right? At the same time, you can look downstream, and my job is to help founders raise from big value venture capital funds, right? And those are the kinds of people that back our founders. And you sure see them backing a lot of Stanford PhDs. And so you can go, oh man, but gosh, it feels safer to back a person with a certain credential, because they pattern match for what you think what you're seeing out there from later stage investors. But that's not the right way to do pre-seed investing. But so that's the two sides of that particular coin. And so, of course, we have dropouts from state universities, and we have Stanford PhDs in the portfolio, because I think the job of investing at this stage is to sort of, it's almost curation, right? You kind of don't want, like, I'm a DJ, amateur, right? And if you're throwing a party for a bunch of people, you don't want to just play like old school hip hop if it's not, you want to be able to successfully build an experience that appeals to everyone, and they're not sure why, and it covers all these different bases, and it moves people through. And investing in startups is kind of like that too. Like, you have to have a surface area that's much, much broader than any one particular credential set or any one particular micro slice of the market. So I don't know. That was what that was about.
Let me ask you a couple follow-up questions on the pedigree thing. I've actually heard people take that argument even further and say, like, you definitely don't want the Stanford people, and you definitely don't want the Google or Facebook people, right. Because they haven't suffered, and they don't know how to make something out of nothing. And if you got a Stanford PhD, like, you've been on a pretty golden path. What's your take on that? Like, do you actually, like, ding people because of too much pedigree?
So I think it depends who's holding the piece of paper. If you moved here from rural India when you were 12
Hmm.
and fought your way through the public school system into a college, were able to take that and lever it into a PhD program at a great school. That's very different than if your parents were also PhDs in California, and one of them ran a technology company.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I think it's the whole human that you're evaluating. Um, some people have been at AWS for 8 years, and they've been there because they've been challenged and stimulated by the software engineering work that they've been tasked with doing. And they also needed to build a nest egg. And now they're at the time in their life when they want to do a startup. And then there are people who have worked in machine learning at AWS for 8 years who should stay there. And my job is to figure out the difference between those two people who look identical on paper.
Yeah. How do you do that? If they do look identical on paper, how do you tell the ones that should stay versus the ones that, like, this is your time to go for it?
I mean, if I could bottle that, I could sell it. And if I knew I had it, yeah, I just don't know. I think sometimes look, I've built a Google Sheet or Google form that we score founders on all these different axes.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter whether I use it or not. Like, because at the end of the day, you just get a feel for the human and their reasons for doing the thing they're doing, and the urgency that they feel to do that, and the vision that they have to build something meaningful, and the understanding that they have of what that journey looks like, and the the knowledge that they have of the things that they need to do to get there. And you can evaluate maybe the wherewithal that they have to execute against those things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the stuff that matters, and that's what we try to figure out.
Another follow-up question. You mentioned that sometimes the downstream investors, they do like that pedigree, or they do put a lot of money against, Stanford PhDs. Does that mean that, have you seen a case where you backed maybe a less conventional founder who didn't have all that pedigree, but was producing a really legit, great growing business, and they encountered more headwinds than they should have because of that lack of resume? Or I would imagine at some point, like, the numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah, I think it's not companies that get sort of parabolic or pre-parabolic growth, or
Mm-hmm.
they start to look a certain way from the numbers, and they have the right logos, and they're in the right market. Those companies get funded. It's more the companies that, if it were a female founder who's been at Microsoft for 18 years and is non-technical,
Mm-hmm.
or a male PhD from Berkeley, both companies are doing okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay to good, right? But keep in mind, to be venture backable at Series A, you have to be really, really great. And that's the history. Historically, that's always been the case. And then it wasn't for a little bit, but now it is again.
Mm-hmm.
What does great look like? Well, it could be that you've got good plus a credential that takes you over the line. If you're good but don't have the credential that takes you over the line, or don't have a profile that historically gets backed a lot, then you don't clear the line.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
So it's more like it's just people will give you the benefit of the doubt more
Mm-hmm.
if there's a reason to give you the benefit of the doubt. Like, so I get it, right? I have a freaking English major from Middlebury College. Like nobody's get my pedigree academically isn't going to give me the benefit of the doubt. And if you put and if I'm looking at me and then I'm looking at and I have a business that's like this, and then there's someone who's similar but has an additional set of interesting credentials that signify their intelligence and depth of knowledge and ability to focus and think critically that I don't have, well, then I would probably invest more in that person too. Like I would give them the benefit of the doubt too. That's data. So, I'm not going to say that you understand why it happens.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like if your company's like killing it, then you could not even have a college degree. It's like, wow, that chart is clear. It's parabolic. Like, let's pour gas on this. But many cases, they are in that gray area. And that edge does go to patterns that I guess investors are comfortable with or have seen success with in the past.
That's right. And they're comfortable probably because they at least think that they have data that shows that they'll feel good about that bet will make their investors money. The only reason they're doing this is to make their investors money. That there's no other reason they're doing this, right? That's what VCs do, right? Yeah. So they're doing it because they think it's going to make them more money. And perhaps historically it's provable that it will or has. And I think what the challenge that exists is trying to unpack how much of where's the chicken and where's the egg in that. So how much of that is a tautology? How much of it is, yes, PhDs make us more money because we give PhDs more money. Like it may be actually that it's, correlation, not causation. And that would be the argument, and certainly we have, we believe that, talent is distributed equally and opportunity isn't. And, we're not an impact fund, but we have folks from every kind of background as founders in our portfolio. And so we believe we're on that side of that sort of discussion. But breaking the cycle of we've done this and it works, so we should keep doing it, even if you don't know how it would work if you didn't do it. Like there's no real A/B test at the growth stage. This is why, not to go on a tangent, but this is why the whole thing comes down to LP pressure. If institutional LPs pressure GPs to make different decisions at the growth stage, then investors at my stage are freer to continue to do what we want to do. I've talked to female VCs at seed and Series A who kind of they know the data and they see it. And so they're making investments and they're like, well, I want to back women, but 2% of venture dollars go to women. Am I going to be the one to change that? Or am I just going to back a bunch of women that don't get backed at the Series B and C? So it's insidious. And it's not a lack of desire on the part of early stage investors to change it. It's a lack of incentive at the later stage to be open to it. And this is not something that I pound the table about, or I'm not an activist, but I'm just sharing my kind of personal views about it. It's something most people will not talk about.
Yeah.
But my goal, again, I believe I'm backing founders regardless of their background who can create that parabolic company. So I don't care, even if it is later stage people making decisions based on biases or bad data. I actually don't care. I don't think it matters, because it would be irresponsible of me to invest this way if I did think it mattered. I just believe I'm backing people because it's 2024. I'm backing people who can create massive outcomes no matter who they are.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so interesting how if you believe that you're being meritocratic and completely data-driven, but you worry that latter stage investors aren't, that kind of creates a disincentive for you to necessarily back the best founder, because you have to consider, well, part of being a great founder is the ability to raise a capital down the line.
You have to be very thoughtful about how you navigate it.
Yeah.
And this woman, this woman's a value investor who I was mentioning, and she's a stage later than me, but still early. And that was her conundrum. I don't feel like I face it because I am, I won't go like founder by founder, but we've got founders in Fund 2 who are from underrepresented backgrounds, let's say in venture, who have Stanford PhDs.
Yeah.
Like my thing is always like, I don't care where you're from, who you sleep with, what you do in your spare time. If there's something spectacular about you that maps to the problem that you're trying to solve, then I want to back you. And I think that's the way that everyone should go about it. But I'm just one man.
Well, let's go. I can't believe we're already 26 minutes in. We have to go to the second point.
Oh no! Oh my gosh! Okay, I'll be fast with these. Sorry.
No. We Kirby, we may have to do a part 2 in a subsequent thing, because these are really good. I don't want to rush you through. The don't over-index on charisma. What I heard from you earlier in our conversation was, hey, you want someone that can raise more than they maybe should and hire people that shouldn't join them, and convince customers to buy stuff that's not quite ready. Sounds like charisma is a really great thing to have. What do you mean by not over-indexing on it?
There's a fine line between charisma and charlatanism. So you don't want to just back a really good salesperson. Like it's actually very hard to invest in founders with sales backgrounds, at least for me, because it's just the same reason it's hard to hire a good sales VP, because they're all really good at selling you. But there's a lot about the job that has nothing to do with selling. And it's the same for founders. And so you have to be, thoughtful. The corollary to that is sort of like Seattle investors, when they see a Valley founder pitching them, they just want to give them money, because Valley founders are just so much more polished than founders in other markets, because they have so many more swings. They've worked at so many more different startups. The startup culture is in the water there. They probably have 5 advisors who've founded companies already. There's just and so you see that as an investor who doesn't always see it, and you go, oh my gosh, this is the best founder in the world. Well, no, I mean, no more so than they would be up here. They just are better at pitching. So that's what I mean. You can't just back people who can just pitch, but it's very hard to back people who can't pitch, even if they've got other skills. So that's what I mean by that.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. Can you go to 245? Is that okay?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So let me go to the next one, which is don't over-index on revenue, but make sure to back founders who can get profitable.
Yeah, that one's a little less well stated, but I guess what I meant is, at the earliest stage, it kind of doesn't matter whether you have $10,000 in revenue or $100,000 in revenue. It just matters how much do the people who are using the product love the product? And how sad would they be if it went away? So I care much more about, logos than revenue. Do you have 5 recognizable venture-backed startups as customers, and do they love what you're giving them? That matters way more than revenue. I don't even care. However, especially in 2024, whether it's get profitable, maybe it wouldn't be the way I would characterize it if I'd taken more than 5 minutes writing this. But what I meant was, to raise seed now, you need 500K in revenue. To raise seed 2 years ago, you needed a pre-seed and 2 co-founders. And so maybe what I meant was founders who can grow revenue quickly.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. And I hear you on. You'd rather at the early stage have a founder who's got customers who absolutely find their offering indispensable versus the dollar amount right now. Makes a ton of sense. Yeah. What about repeat founders? Don't over-index on them, but make sure to back ones who won't make catastrophic errors.
Well, so one of the reasons I wasn't a great founder was that I was cynical. And I felt like I was maybe trying to run a playbook. And I think repeat founders occasionally fall into that trap. And so, what the advice is often is like, well, you want to back really young founders who, they're too dumb to know what they don't know. And they're just going to run through walls, and you just point them in that direction and let them go. And they're going to find the gold, right? Whereas a repeat founder is going to be, might move slower, might have, they have more to lose. They have, as you and I are fortunate to both know, being, experiext, they have lots of things in their lives, and first-time founders, especially who are coming out of college, just don't. And it's incredible the work rate you see. It's incredible. And so that's why people say don't over-index on repeat. But, the problem with that first-time founder is sometimes, you set them in that direction and they run through walls, but then they run off a cliff because they just weren't looking down. And that could be they bring on the wrong investor, and the investor, they bring like a bad investor who gives them bad terms and it tanks their company. Or it could be they, hire the wrong person, or they, there's so many co-founder issues with first-time founders. So the point is that you can choose either, and you'll have problems with both.
Yeah.
So we predictably, by now, as you might guess, back both kinds of founders.
Yeah. What about don't over-index on work background, but make sure to back founders who know the problem space?
Yeah, that is probably like a clumsy version of the pedigree one. It just means like, just because someone was a, data scientist at a data scientist at GitHub doesn't mean that they're automatically going to build a developer tools, modern data stack technology that is going to, catch fire and go. Like there's way too much, or product managers, right? No, is sort of there's sort of a trope now about people want to go in product management so that they go run a startup, because at a big company, product management, you kind of have your hands in a lot of different pies. But as it turns out, like that's kind of not the archetype you want, because there's no direct responsibility in a lot of cases. And so there's just so that's the one side of it. And at the same time, we're constantly telling founders, like, we want founder market fit.
Right.
We want you to have this amazing secret insight that nobody else has. And the only way you can have that is if you're coming from the space and you worked at a place where it was a problem. And so again, this one where it's just like a correlation problem. Because if you have a successful startup founder, and so all of these, basically there's data on either side. Right?
Yes. I
So,
can see
so,
that.
so you have a successful founder who came from, they came from WhatsApp, and they started like an app analytics company, and it sold for $1 billion. Well, clearly, founder market fit. Of course, we all should have known that. But they could have easily come out of WhatsApp and launched the thing and just been a crappy founder for other reasons, and it doesn't work. Like, so first principles is always just, are they going to be good at founding a company? Like, are they going to be good at figuring out how to create a startup and grow it? Like, that's got to be the first and only question that really matters. And then everything else is like, it just helps you get more comfortable backing them.
Yeah. It's so interesting how your post talks about these common characteristics, and for each one there's examples and counter examples for the rule. So it does sound like at the end it's like, well, ultimately you just got to make a call. It's not going to fit one pattern.
It's infuriating. It's infuriating. It's infuriating, and it's something that nobody really took the time to explain to me when I was starting this journey as a venture capital investor. I mean, the way that people usually talk about this is they just talk about the aspect of luck. There are a lot of really smart, really hardworking people doing this job, and as you know, doing a lot of different jobs, and some of them get lucky and some of them don't. And you got to put yourself in the way of luck. And so you do that by doing the best you can to get the best set of deal flow that you can get, and then do the best job of picking that you can, and then do the best job of winning the deals you pick that you can. Because those are the three things that matter in venture capital. But, this is like the picking part, and it's probably, I would say definitely the hardest part.
Yeah.
Because of exactly this set of challenges.
Market size. I'm guessing, there are some markets that might be too small. I was listening to Jason Calacanis live stream the other day, and he was evaluating some pitches, and there was someone who was pitching like a marketplace for collectibles for tabletop games. And I was like, wow, I don't know how big that market is. Seems not that big, but I'm curious, like, what's your take on how big should the TAM need to be?
I think TAM is an excuse that people use to invest in, to avoid investing in founders that they just don't like. So TAM is like code for ambition, because Amazon's, initial TAM was people who want to buy like duck decoys, right? It was like 5 people. And then it was books, which was like a shrinking TAM. I mean, it was growing into a shrinking TAM. But what was Twitch first? It was Justin TV, right? It was like,
yeah.
It was like we ran ads on that, and got in trouble for it because it was pretty Wild West. But so the thing is not with a great founder, the thing doesn't have to be the thing. The biggest misses that I have are ones where I was like, love the founder, hate the TAM. Love the founder, hate the market. Well, you know what? If you love the founder, find a way to like the market.
What if you love the founder and hate the market? Have you ever been able to convince the founder to look at another market, or do you just go with?
No, because you don't want to back the founder who's like going to change their mind based on your feedback. Like, it's so you just go. I mean, there are still deals we won't do. Like, I won't do biotech, and I won't do. But we won't even take the meeting, so I don't get tempted. But there are the ones on the margins. There's a marketplace adjacent, deal that I'm looking at right now, and we don't do marketplaces anymore. We did it for a fun one, won't do it in fun too. But I like the founder. There are some markets So there's a difference between like market size and markets you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think market size matters. I do think there are markets that I just am allergic to. Like travel is one, ad tech is one. Not surprisingly, markets I've operated in, uh, and so that's certainly a thing. But not. I think the TAM is usually just like if it's the ambition. So it's not the
Mm-hmm.
TAM. It's that you're not telling me why it's going to be monstrously big eventually.
Mm-hmm.
If your ambition is you're like, well, this is a $500 million market, and I can get 5% of it or 10% of it. That's 50 million in revenue. Then we'll launch another product at 100 million. I'm just like, hey, it's very hard to believe that,
Mm-hmm.
and just so unless you're like a dynamic, rip the money out of my pocket, you're so good founder. And that's my
Mm-hmm.
point. It's like these rules are only for like the people on the margin.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, why did you change your mind about marketplaces?
All the easy ones have been done.
Mm.
They're slow. There's always margin compression,
Mm.
leaky bucket problem.
Mm.
Um, yeah, lots of reasons.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. Don't ever back solo founders, but make sure to back singular visionaries.
So people will back solo founders. This was just kind of like I was running out of steam here. Um, uh, uh, but there's something. There are a lot of investors who won't back solo founders, and it's
Mhm.
because um, you need there's like there are a lot of LPs who won't back a solo GP.
Mm.
People like to have two people in the room making decisions.
Mhm.
Um, I personally believe like that I'll make better decisions by myself than me and someone else would together, and that's why I do this the way I do it, and that's why solo founders do it the way they do it. But some investors don't like that and won't invest in it. That's all.
Yeah. Don't work with assholes, but make sure to back
Oh,
disagreeable
this one,
founders.
this one I love because I find myself looking at this portfolio of companies and the founders that I work with, and I go, God, I like all these people so much. Is that a problem? Seriously, am
Mm.
I over indexing on a certain personality type? Or, I mean, it's really challenging. And you realize there are investors who are assholes who like backing founders who are assholes, but they don't mean to do it. There's not like a philosophy. They just do it naturally because that's what they understand. And no, and I really have thought about this, right? And you're like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to name names, but there are very, very successful funds with GPs who are like notoriously just jerks. So what? Like they make money for their investors. That's what this is all about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a way to do it. Uh, and I definitely think about like when I meet someone who's just disagreeable, you're like, well, disagreeable is actually you kind of need to be disagreeable because nobody's going to believe you, and you have to fight and fight and fight. And like, there's this whole mythology of the archetype of the disagreeable or the jerk asshole founder. Um, I don't know. I think there are enough founders who break that rule, and there's enough data out there to show you that's not an indicator of future success. Uh, and and life's too short, frankly. And if you don't like that, don't invest in my fund. That's that's where I've come out on it. But there are times where I'm like, should I make this investment because I don't like this person?
Mm. That's a strange. I hope you don't do that. That just because then you'd have to engage with them for years, right?
Right.
Like,
And then they probably find a way to, if they're really an asshole, then they'll find a way to screw me because I'm giving them a reason because I don't like them. Trust me, it's all turtles all the way down. I've
love it.
gamed this all out, so yeah, it's anyway, it's fine.
Well, Kirby, this has been a fantastic conversation. How do you engage with founders, and tell us a little bit more about Ascend, and where do you tend to focus, and how should people connect with you if they want to kind of talk
Yeah,
more?
yeah. So we really are focused on what today people are calling AI,
Hmm.
but really what we believe is just the evolution of technology and disruptive founders, creating new companies. But we'll call it AI native SaaS. So AI at the application layer. So thesis is really built around this moment in time, being a time where every 10 years or so this happens. Incumbents have gotten really big. They're built on old technology stacks. They're built on old philosophy stacks. They've built bureaucracies, and they've become these living organisms that can't strip out the core of themselves. We think that right now with generative AI, you can build a new type of company from the inside. So similar to the shift from steam-powered factories to electric-powered factories. The steam-powered factories can hang around for a while, but eventually they will be displaced by electric-powered factories because the electric-powered factories are more efficient because they are built for electric power. And we believe the generative AI companies that are built from the inside out with the processes that are based on Gen AI. So you don't have a eng manager writing a report, pulling the check-ins from the week and sending it to a product manager. You have a bot do it, and the bot talks to the product management bot. You have Copilot, and now you have it's already 0.3x more efficiency per engineer. Companies that have been built on the old stack just aren't going to stick around forever. And so our belief is that you'll create a new Salesforce, you'll create a new ed tech company, you'll create a new Gusto, you'll create a new Bloomberg. And so that's the thesis we invest behind. And we back, incredible founders who are passionate about what the world's going to look like in 10 years and how they're going to shape that in their industry. And we do that primarily in Seattle. And we're easy to find. I'm Kirby at Ascend.vc. That's my email. And I'm on Twitter most of my life at Kirby Winfield.
And at what stage should founders reach out to you? How far along do you want them to be?
I had a founder ask me this yesterday at a kind of fireside chat I did. And I just told him straight up, I'm like, it depends on the founder. So if you are a conventionally backable founder who is coming out of a hot startup with a ton of credibility and sort of venture catnip on you, then it's never too early, because you're not going to poison anything, right? You're going to be who you are, and that's enough to get someone interested. And you can't screw that up. If you're like I was when I was a founder, and you're like pretty good, but people aren't going to be beating down your door, you want to make sure you have your ducks in a row. You want to make sure you have your story straight. You want to bootstrap it for a little while. You want to remove objections. So it's not fair, but that is how it is. And that's so for me. I'm like, of course, talk to me whenever you want. Like, I want to be there. I want to be there as early as possible. That's what we do. We're the first check into these companies. So I want founders to come to me at the idea stage, right? And we've done that time and time again with our founders. Idea stage through Series B, we're right there. We're on the napkin, kind of figuring out your raise with you. We're like, well, and if you're ready to partner, we're there to say, what, this go-to-market maybe doesn't make sense, or have you thought about taking the product in this direction? That's a lot of work. We don't do it all the time, but with the right founder, we're happy to do it. But as a friend of founders, I always say, just be thoughtful about when you do that, depending on how you think your marketability is.
Great advice, Kirby. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I'll put a link for the folks that are watching on replay to Kirby's original post. Check it out and get in touch with him if you got something special cooking up and you think the time is right to talk to Kirby.
Amen.
Good stuff, my friend.
Yeah, no, this was a blast. I had a great time, and I'm happy to see your face. Always makes me smile.
Yeah, I gotta say one thing. I think you are being very humble, saying that Middlebury is not a place of pedigree. I would love if any of my kids could get in there.
Well, I mean, what I say is I couldn't get in there today, and and what I meant was too. There's no graduate degree here. I got the the School of Hard Knocks in startups right after college and never went back.
Love it. Love it. Well, I think you did okay. So good on you, my friend. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, man. Take care.
Bye, Kirby.